recorded and shown tomorrow, so that's probably good. Yes. Apologies for absence. I don't know of anybody that's not here. No. Okay. Minutes from last meeting. Is everybody happy? Yeah. Is that a yes? Yeah. I haven't got any items of urgent business. Have we, can I think? Okay. Thank you. Declarations of interest at all? No? Thank you. We've obviously got the police online tonight. Can't hear him.
I can hear from you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, are you happy to take questions afterwards?
Of course.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, I'll let you go ahead.
Good evening to you all, first and foremost. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to come along. I just hope to give you a bit of an update on where we are with our response to Operation Caesar, or what is more commonly going to be known as Thurrock Community Policing Team's response to off-road vehicle nuisance in Thurrock. A fair amount of updates for you. If I can't see hands, obviously I can take questions at the end, but I'll rattle through what I can and hopefully cover a fairly concise view of where we are moving forwards. So we continue to push with Op Caesar, which has seen far more significant success since its relaunch in 2021. In the year alone, in 2022, we have issued 35 Section 59 warnings, which is more than double what we issued in all of 2021 by a fairly significant margin. So we've also seized 3 vehicles, crushed another, and more interestingly, we've not identified any repeat offenders, which is something we wasn't necessarily expecting. It does necessarily show that some of the actions are acting more as a deterrent. We're not seeing the same individual stops over and over and receiving the same warnings. Aside from that, we're looking to make an impact as we can on the top 5 areas of concern, as we certainly know. And what we've noticed is that primarily back in 2021, we were seeing our offending mainly occur on a Sunday. What we've seen from review of both social media and from our responses, that this is now switched and we're seeing more activity on Saturdays than anything else. And again, it's just trying to highlight that we're seeing a reaction to the deployments from Operation Caesar. The top 5 areas, although it does continue to fluctuate, we are seeing the same locations sort of go up and down the list as we go. But it also, as highlighted when we relaunched the event, was to make sure that we're putting our resources where they need to be and not spreading ourselves too thin, so we can actually deal and address the problem of the off-road vehicle nuisance. At present, for June, the top 5 areas are listed as follows. At number 1 is Billet or Rainbow Lane in Stanford Hope. Number 2 is the rear of Essex Arena or the Davy Down Nature Reserve. And most of these incidents, though, are usually discovered by officers upon patrol. Allship Heath, Chapel St Mary, number 3. Number 4, which really links into the above, is Blackshot and Grays, as we believe is a circuit that's being used by the individuals using that one. And finally, at number 5 is Colne in East Tilbury. Now, an update for you about the support the council in the implementation of our off-road vehicles team. As hopefully you are all aware, and thank you to the support of Thurrock Council, our pitch to have a quad bike team as a trial in Thurrock was obviously successful. Hot off the press and only really decided from yesterday, we're in a position where we can say that we're on course for what we believe to be a September launch for the team. The training courses are currently booked for the officers that have been allocated to the team. The quad bikes are in order. One is due to arrive in late June, the other in early July, and they just need to be built in the workshop. So all is very much on course, and once we get nearer to that date, we'll make sure that we're linked in with yourselves at the council, as well as the councillors, as well as many chief officers, I would imagine, from Essex Police that are going to be interested in this, as we're the first of its kind in Essex. So certainly a lot of attention is going to be drawn when the launch does occur. I'll make mention as well to our continuing use or review of how we're going to use drones. The leader had offered his support in assuring that we could use some of the council assets. However, of our own, we have a meeting scheduled with our own drone single point of contact inside of Essex Police And we're looking to have the community policing team issued with their own drone, which we will be able to use on deployment for Operation Caesar. The purpose of the drone, as highlighted when we relaunched, is not so much as a deterrent, but it's about evidence capture and also allowing officers to review what's happening and where, and being able to see offences before even we arrive on the scene, which will all form part of our deployments. We continue to run pop-up engagement events at the areas of concern I mentioned, and they are being run by my CSEO Neil Brand and the boroughs. I believe we have some requested for the very near future that we should be doing, and we'll be looking at running a few others as we move forward into the future. An update for you as well on where we are with the potential application of a PSPO around the off-road vehicle nuisance. We had a meeting yesterday in our off-road vehicles task and finish group, where it was very much being reviewed by the council legal team to look at where we were, and we're very much looking at now collating the data evidential package, which we'll be submitting to the legal team to review as to what the portability will be for the PSPO. If we are able to be successful, the real push on this is we're looking at having a power of entry for officers, which we wouldn't currently have if we're looking at sanction or I should say seizure of vehicles under Section 59. It would also allow some of the officers in the civil enforcement team to issue fines when on joint operations with us. And finally, we could also then potentially look at the sanction of some of the vehicles such as low loaders, transits that are being used to transport off-road vehicles into Thurrock. We would also be able to find the drivers for facilitating and bringing those vehicles into the area, opposed to just waiting to deal with the drivers themselves. So it's all very positive, but nevertheless, it's at the early stage of development, and one that both ourselves and the CSP are working very hard to make sure we can get the right result in that. An update for you, which I have obtained from the CSP and yourself and the council, is around our target hardening of those top 5 areas of concern, where we've been working in conjunction with both the council, the police, and local councillors, and some of yourselves might have been involved in looking at vulnerable areas and how we can improve, if we say, for want of a better term, the availability of our drivers to get onto these sites and to drive in an antisocial way. An update for you for what I have for Bellas Country Park, where the owners have implemented a number of measures themselves, and the only work outstanding is a fence gap in Hangman Lane we're looking to close. For Alcett Heath, we're looking at a number of options, one of which is staggered barriers have now been erected in 4 locations, and whilst this won't necessarily prevent access, it will slow down the bikes at the junctions, so in the interest of both safety as well as that, for when we start our patrols there, that will be of a great assistance to us. This is mainly due to the bridleways and public rights of ways. These are the only restrictions that are going to be available to us after we consulted with the legal team. Mobile CCTV is due to be erected on King George Avenue at the end of the bridleway, and works to target harden between St Peters and Alluric have also been identified. And we have an appointment for my Ops Caesar spot, PC Priest, to go to the location to advise on what the most appropriate response is for that area, although that necessarily isn't linked to Alcett Heath. Obviously very nearby, and what we want to do, if we identify an area where maybe they may be pushed onto once we intensify our efforts, we want to make sure we're ahead of the game, opposed to playing catch up. For Butts Lane, fencing has been repaired at access to the car park, which is just behind where the golf club is. We're looking at a barrier to be moved in Butts Lane to restrict access to the footpath. In Billet Lane, there is areas to target harden identified. However, this is going to be a much longer piece of work that needs to be looked at. And this is due to proposed work for some 4G pitches in the area of where the potential restrictions we would look to be put up. For Black Shots, the site's been visited and it's identified, as I'm sure all of you can probably imagine, the size of Black Shots playing field. If you know it from any local knowledge, it's very vast with many, many access points. Trying to restrict all of these would be incredibly expensive and incredibly difficult. And if I'm perfectly honest with you, I'm not sure how efficient it would be at resolving the issue. We have looked at the walkway by the allotments, and that is going to be closed off. The Housing have authority in the budget to proceed with the barriers to restrict parking on the land at the end of Long Lane as well. And finally, Colne in East Tilbury, an area that you've seen on the top 5 now for a few months. It's a new area identified. A site visit has been conducted and works as to what we believe will be effective at reducing the ability of bikes to get onto that land has been costed, and it's currently at the stage of being reviewed. A further site visit is planned for the Mardyke and Davy Down, but that's obviously looking forward to the future. But nevertheless, as an overview, what we have is it's identifying that we're working very well with the council in trying to make those areas harder to ride in. We've got some really good plans for the future and certainly some exciting times already, despite the good work that's already ongoing with the teams. That is all from me as a whistle-stop tour of where we are. Hopefully that's concise enough to give you an overview of where we currently are. Happy to take any questions from anyone, of course, if you have any.
Thank you for that. You know I will have a lot of questions. Blackshots Field, well, they had them on the golf course. The golf course you was mentioning was Top Meadow, yes?
Yes.
Yeah, they had them on there yesterday. We now seem to have a lot of quad bikes now. Well, not quad bikes, they're dune buggies. Are they actually allowed on the road, or?
So,
you know, like beach buggies.
No, I understand. It would have to be adapted for use on a road. So, for example, a quad bike, in theory, and you will see legalised quad bikes being used on our roads where they will have indicators, rear view mirrors, and an index plate and registration mark. Drivers of said vehicles will have to obviously have a driving licence and insurance. So they can be driven legally if they've been adapted for use on the road. If not, and they haven't, and they drive on the road, then all of the other relevant road traffic offences that we have available to us can be addressed and they can be dealt with.
Okay, thanks for that. They're actually, from Woodside, they're actually using the Persimmon site now to come through, to come onto Buxton Road, King Edward Drive, across the field.
I know
They're actually using the allotment part now. I've been asked by many residents who live in King Edward Drive while we're not, I know you don't like to door knock or do things like that, but I've been sent a lot of pictures today of number plates in Long Lane. It's all right. In Long Lane, we've been sent lots of pictures with number plates. We know they're from London, because they've got London 020 stickers on the vans, so we know they're from London. But that people have got photos. Do you just want them to send them to you, or are you happy for me to send you what I've got?
I think then from previous discussions, I mean, the more engagement and assistance you can help with us from having the public understand the ways in which to report these, and although there are many avenues, as you know yourself, Councillor, we've obviously got PC Priest and PC Brand that will act as that point of contact, and any of that information you have, you can pass that directly straight to the PC Priest or PC Brand. I can assure you that it'll all form part of our operational response, and it just helps us build a bigger intelligence picture as to who those riders are. It comes as no surprise to me that some of those riders from London, and that works on what our hypothesis was when we initially relaunched, and I think linking back into really those PSPO conditions about bringing vehicles into Thurrock and allowing us to just sanction the drivers for having a vehicle on the back would be something that we're looking to address and to deal with.
And most of those in Long Lane, they've got 3-year-olds riding on the handlebars, you know, so we know we've seen it. Trouble is, people have got these cameras outside the house and they're actually taking pictures of the motorbikes coming in and out, you know, and it's not something you can always see. We can't always be in the right place at the right time, but we know where they're coming because we're actually getting... People are telling me, residents are telling me that the website to go on isn't that easy to access. It's not easy to put pictures on there and it's not easy to access, so I don't know whether you can have some input in that. I don't mind speaking to the Commissioner, but we need more access.
Are you talking about the Extra Eyes website that's been referred to?
I don't know where it was. It just said that if they was going online, they couldn't gain access to the website. It was so hard to go to different levels of it. That wasn't easy. They gave up in the end. A lot of people just gave up.
Ultimately, the easiest way to send files, videos not so much due to the size of the pictures, certainly, and if we're talking about Ring doorbell, CCTV, then I would say screen grabs or still pictures are better for us from an evidential purpose, and so we need to know where we need to go from. We're looking at implementing our own sort of inbox for now to say to the public, look, this is where you're going to send any details in for off-road vehicle usage, but for now what I would say is this, and to give some reassurance for those members of the public that maybe feel that website maybe isn't fit for purpose. It's not one that I have designed nor used, so I can't comment. But what I can say is that they're sent to you, Councillor, or they can be passed details of the point of contact that you have to send them in. If it links to off-road vehicle nuisance, we want to know about it. Simple as that. Even if we can't action it, even if we don't have any power to say we're going to go and lock that individual up. If it allows us maybe to identify, oh, it's that chap in the, let's just say, the orange crash helmet again, or it's the same quad bike that we saw on King Edward Drive that made off from that officer, it builds an intelligence picture, and this is the kind of information that leads to prosecution, which is why it's vital. So, without being flippant, the more information you can give us, the better. And really, you can encourage your constituents to report it to you. If they can't report it to you, they have PC Priest, the community policing team in Thurrock, and PC Brown from a community engagement safety officer perspective that can be linked into directly as well.
Okay. I mean, we do appreciate the work you're doing, and we know what you're doing. The trouble is, general public don't know what you're doing, and it's getting it out there, isn't it, for general public to see what you're doing. We know what's coming. I found a petition done in 2011. That was 11 years ago, and we're still really no further forward. And we've still got them. They seem to have carte blanche now in riding about. And I've had a couple of people hurt on Blackshots Field, a couple of elderly people. And I think they're frightening people, actually, because they seem to be just getting away with it. I know you said we've got things to come, and I'm not going to take up, because I know there's other people want to ask questions. But thanks, I do appreciate what you do. We just need to wait till Operation Caesar gets really going, and hopefully we'll see some good work from that. Councillor Muldaney.
Thank you, Councillor Redsill. Yes, a couple of questions. So first of all, sorry, I'm new to the committee. Is it Inspector Fisher?
Temporary Chief Inspector Fisher. I've took a temporary promotion. So apparently
okay. Well, congratulations on your
Terry's absolutely fine,
elevation. Yeah, I mean we've spoken by email, but I don't think we've met before. In terms of the quad bikes, I'm new to the committee. Can you explain how having a quad bike team is going to address nuisance motor vehicles?
Of course. When I carried out my review in 2021, when we still had Operation Caesar running, and this problem was very much at the forefront of a lot of concerns from local residents. The issue that we had is that the areas where the drivers were riding, in most cases, not all, but in most cases, were quite remote. We had a situation, just for example, where in Stamford there was a quarry where quad bikers were going and riding around, and my officers would arrive, and it would take them approximately 25 minutes to walk to the location to get there. And before they even arrived, as you can imagine, they've been seen and individuals are scarpered. That can also lay effect into, as you can imagine, as the weather deteriorates into the winter months, even somewhere as simple as Blackshots, there is no ability for marked police vehicles to drive off-road. So trying to get to where these individuals are, because although some may make off, the vast majority don't. The vast majority have got a vehicle that's worth a lot of money. They'll make their way back to where maybe a transit or a low loader is parked, and they'll frantically then load it up and try and scarper. And again, but this is usually off-road. What the quad bikes are going to be able to do for us is allow my officers to, engage with anyone that's obviously involved in any of these activities, detain them, and ultimately impose sanction. What I envision happening is it will allow us to make far more use of enforcement under the Road Traffic Act, under Section 59 of the Road Traffic Act, and ultimately assist in vehicle seizure. We've also seen in other areas from research the use of the quad bike. It's not as a deterrent that you're going to be expecting officers chasing after bikes, endangering the public. This is not what it's about. What we've seen nationally from research that's been carried out, and I myself carried out a vast amount of research on this, is people usually come from out of areas to ride vehicles off-road, and Thurrock is seen, or I would say was seen, as very much as an easy target. And by having an off-road vehicles team there, it is noted, and in these forums that they run on social media, if they know that we have an off-road vehicle response and police officers that can get to them on quad bikes, I'm very confident they'll be going elsewhere and outside of Thurrock, and ultimately which is the aim.
Thank you. Can I just come back again to chasing vehicles, because that was the other question I had following up on that. Having sort of taken part in a lot of Coffee with Cops and other engagement activities with police, obviously it's sort of been quite a theme that it's Essex Police's policy not to chase vehicles. So quad bikes won't be there to chase people around the heath. If we're talking about Chadwell, they'll only be there to allow access to people that are riding around the heath. I mean, I don't think the problem that we've got in Chadwell is coming from out of Borough. I mean, I know for certain that, you know, a certain proportion of it is definitely coming locally, and residents have supplied the police with addresses in some cases of where those individuals are coming from, but that doesn't appear to have been acted on, as that those individuals are still on the heath quite regularly. So I suppose my question is, can you just confirm it won't, you know, it's not about chasing people around the heath, and how are you going to address the actual in Thurrock problem? Because obviously people, when they see you coming, especially on Alsett Heath, same as Blackshots, you've got lots of places for them to get on and off, so it's very difficult to catch them, and they're just going to scarper home, aren't they?
Fair amount of question, and I'll start with the first point you made. It's not Essex Police's policy to pursue people. I also work as an Oscar 1 and a tactical firearms commander inside of Essex Police, and the pursuit policy we have ultimately is we will chase criminals, we will pursue them, and if needs be, we'll use force to do so, but it has to be proportionate, and that's the difference. That's not just a policy that Essex Police is looking at. The caveat to the one force that doesn't do that, but is a bit more risk averse, there might be so bold, is the Metropolitan Police having a different policy to what we do, which is where the comparison is sometimes drawn. I'm also a pursuit trained driver and have been involved in many such, but what we need to look at here is when pursuits happen, there is a risk to officers, there's a risk to the subject, but most importantly, there's a risk to the public. Drivers will do ridiculously dangerous things and endanger our public. And we need to look at this. This isn't a road that these people will be making off on. These are our parks, these are our bridleways. Children play in these areas, dog walkers are in these areas. I will not allow my officers to endanger the public. I understand the concern, though, and this is where, I suppose, before I answer, I appreciate we're being recorded, but this conversation, is it a matter of public interest? Will it be displayed to the public in any way, shape or form, my follow-up to you? I asked because if I'm going... Sorry, Councillor.
Yeah, this is all being live streamed.
There are set tactics that have been devised to ensure that we will be able to detain people using tactics involving both vehicles, quad bikes and drones. However, to ensure that those tactics are efficient, I don't believe I would like to discuss them in a public forum, because I don't think that would be sensible. What I will do, Councillor, I'll invite you if you wish. I'm more than happy to set up a meeting with you privately offline, can discuss my tactics with you as to what we're going to be doing. I'm very confident, as I've set them out myself, that they're going to be effective, but ultimately it's also a trial period. If we run 12 months and we identify that this just isn't working and we have to be pursuing them, it's something that we reviewed at the end of the trial period, and that's what it's all about. It's looking at how effective can we be at targeting this issue. And look, and let's be positive, because it's exciting. This is an issue that's going up and down the country, and in Essex, it is an Essex-wide problem. We're the only district getting this, and that's through some really hard work by the command team here and some bits we put in. So we're going to be interested as to what we can actually achieve once we get the assets there.
Yeah, I mean, I'd welcome having a private meeting. I mean, my concern is this actually going to be cost effective for residents who, at the end of the day, fund all of these operations through taxation. Can I just ask, so there was some figures there about what's happened this year. So in 2022, 35 Section 59 warnings, seized 3 vehicles and crushed another. No repeat offenders. That sounds good. Are you able to break that down into the priority areas? Where did those seizures, etc., take place?
I could, if given more time. Unfortunately, I don't have that data to hand. It is available. I would be able to obtain it. I would be able to break that down on a, should we say, a ward or top 5 basis if required. And if that's something you require, Councillor, by all means, again, in our follow-up meeting, if you wish, if you just give me an idea of the area you'd like me to look into, I'm confident I can get that relatively quickly, as we have a weekly return that's sent to me with all the data, and we keep it rolling for the year.
Great, thank you.
No problem.
I keep forgetting that because we haven't been using them all the time. I think we need, perhaps offline, we do need a meet, and we need to know where everything is going. We just need perhaps a meeting with a few councillors where the areas are worse.
Absolutely.
I know we've got, just mentioning, before I let Councillor Tandy come in, we have got Ron Evans Field in Long Lane where it's used. It is actually council land, but it's not for dog walkers anymore or people to enjoy, because it has become a part of the social media where they invite people down and they congregate there on a Sunday and Saturdays. So that is something, I mean, it's council land, so it should be up to our enforcement, really, because it's our land, or we do something with that land, because it's not a wildlife centre anymore. So it might be something we can talk offline with, if that's all right with you.
Absolutely, and we are seeing a couple of emerging areas popping up as a result of the operation, and understanding where they're going, and that until we get from yourselves, Councillor, it's vital. So absolutely, and happy to accommodate a meeting to speak to any of you offline.
Okay, lovely, thank you. Councillor Fender?
Yeah. Obviously, you know the 5 hotspots in the area. I don't know what the process would be for CCTV. Obviously, you have the AMP cameras. Can the police or council push for cameras in those spots?
I think that's highlighted in one area. We have seen if it's a benefit. For example, King Edward Drive, we have put a camera up, which was requested by council, and that was erected. ANPR cameras for the use of off-road vehicles are, for want of a better term, useless. These vehicles don't have a registration mark in almost all certainties, so therefore the cameras, they're black and white, and all they're looking to scan is digits and numbers. They don't allow us necessarily to review footage per se. As well as that, the challenge that comes with off-road vehicle nuisance is that our riders and drivers are always wearing crash helmets in more often than not cases for safety's sake, which allows some difficulties when we're looking at identification. So CCTV evidence can be beneficial in building a picture. I think, as I said before, we know that personal protective equipment is quite expensive. And these individuals that make a hobby of driving on our greenbelt land, like idiots, for want of a better term, they will primarily use the same helmets, same PPE. So what we do is we use the footage that we obtain through, we're looking to do with drones, for example, which would be far more efficient than CCTV, to allow us to build that intelligent picture, which allows us then to seek prosecutions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, you mentioned black shots and the difficulty with target hardening because of the size. What about Hangman's Wood opposite? Because they use it as a loop, and I mean today I've seen 2 bikes come through and they come whizzing up and they go round on the old A13 on the wrong side of the road and then onto black shots that way. So are there any plans to try and put any barriers at access points on Hangman's Wood? Because that would at least slow them down, or, you know, slow their fun as well, because they couldn't do that circuit.
Again, I won't speak for Michelle or Vince in his absence, who's been doing some of that work for the council. But Hangman Woods, although I'm aware it links heavily into black shots, but also into Alsip Heath as a circuit that they use. From local knowledge, that area in particular, it does have a multiple amount, especially at the front end where the main road is near to Daneholes. It has several entrances. As well as that, there's some bushes that could quite easily be driven over. If we're talking at spending, and this is not the police's money, this is the council's money, if we're talking at spending, 20, 30, 40,000 pounds on some barriers, we need to make sure that it's effective. To put that into context, the entire pilot for the quad bikes for 12 months, training, PPE, purchasing bikes, only cost 40,000. So it's what we're looking at is spending that money to be more efficient. And the barriers, although they can be effective at times, there are some legal implications when it comes to bridleways. But most importantly, with areas, and Blackshots is the best example, and I think Hangman's Woods at the front end is another. It's not always going to be efficient. Maybe for quad bikes, but for when we're looking at off-road scramblers and as such as bikes like that, they zip through them or they just get ripped out very quickly. I'm always open to reviewing areas, and Councillor, if you feel that it might be of benefit, as we have done, as I've said previously, we've arranged meetings with councillors in different wards to look at those areas of vulnerability with my spot for Operation Caesar, PC Priest. And if we think that there's some good to be done, absolutely, we'll look to see if the funds can be secured, and we'll make our recommendations to council.
Thank you.
Could you give me any updates of any trouble in Aveley, please? I know there have been bikes and other motorbikes and God knows what going on in the Love Lane area, the fields. But I know there's a school going to be built there now, so that might all change. But could you give me any other updates of any other hotspots that you might have, please?
I mean, to be realistic, we get calls for off-road vehicle nuisance all over Thurrock. It is not limited to that top 5. Sometimes we have off-road vehicle nuisance in areas such as, like we said, with Davy Down that we might will come across, but we get 1 or 2 calls maybe in Corringham, or as you said, Aveley have seen 1 or 2 calls. The problem being is that we have a very small team that has a very large remit of responsibility. Off-road vehicle nuisance for my community policing team is just one strand of a vast amount that they need to focus on. If there is an emerging robbery series, they deal with that. If there is a joint working event involving the council and patrols for drug dealing, we deal with that. Hate crime investigation, I could go on. But what I'm alluding to is the reason why we have that top 5 is because we identified that the old method of just responding to where we were told there was off-road vehicle nuisance, it wasn't efficient, and it was trying to make sure that we had the resources in the right place. What I would encourage you to do, councillor, as I have to many others, is to get the message out there to your constituents that if we're not called, they won't see a response, because the top 5 is adjudicated by calls made to police. Even if no response, even if nothing happens, that is tallied up at the end of every month, where we look at where are the areas of most concern, where have we been called to. And once we get that top 5 established, and we're only talking sometimes with a difference of 1 or 2 calls for some areas not being on that list, that's when Operation Seize deployments will happen on a regular basis. Next to that, of course, if you call the police and the unit's available, 1 with a 10, but when we're talking about officers from my community policing team who are actively and very passionate about targeting this issue, those are the officers that will deploy on off-season.
Thanks, Inspector. I think it's something that we might be able to get out on our comms, because I think we need to get people on board to report to you, because as we keep telling everybody, if you don't report and just moan, it doesn't help us as councillors. We need that report to go in, to be logged. Even if you don't get anywhere, you just get an instant number. We need that to report. So it has to, I think we just need to get even our comms to do some work on that, whether we go through Democratic Services and we go tell our comms through there. But we need to do, even I can do that, but I think we need to get it out there. People need, and I don't wish this to be against the police, but I think people have got that into that position where police don't do anything, and I think we've got to get away from that. People have got to report, otherwise we can't do anything. I know you've got good things coming, so we need to push that, so we tell people what is actually coming and you are going to do, and hopefully something will come of it. But I would appreciate that meeting, even if it's only a few of us from the areas that are the worst areas, just have a face-to-face meeting, if you don't mind. If you can come up with some dates for us, I'm quite willing to bend to come.
So I think the best thing to do, Councillor, would be if you can identify who would like to be involved. If collectively, just send me an email who wants to be involved. And obviously I work Monday to Friday 9 to 5 on most days. I'm sure we can find a convenient time for us to come together. If it's, I'd rather it face to face, and either at the council offices or at Grays Police Station, where we've got a very newly refurbished conference room we could use, and certainly over a cup of tea or coffee, just go over some of those finer points for you. More than happy.
Thank you, Chair. We've just looked at the target hardening in Chadwell and at the bridge, and we've seen the fence put up, and we've seen the gap in between. I don't think it's going to slow the bike down, because we're actually the fence you put up there and the barriers you put up there, there's a huge gap in between. I don't think it's going to slow the bikes down. I understand your concerns, and it's
It was obviously jointly looked at by police and the council and implemented by the council. The issue with that is very straightforward in the sense that there are legal issues as to why we can't do anything more with those barriers. We were good to get them staggered as they were. Whether they slow them down or not, we'll soon know. I think for quad bikes or four-wheeled vehicles, it certainly will assist. For motorcycles or off-road vehicles, you may also be right. But due to the legal implications of the public rights of way, they were the only restrictions available to us.
Yeah, okay, I understand because of the legal implications, right? But it looks like the whole idea of putting those fences and barriers, it looks like, you know, it's not working, because if they can still maneuver their ways and, you know, and the barriers cannot stop the quad bikes, don't you think that we are actually not effective so far?
Ultimately, Councillor, I would say this is only one matter to address the problem. It's not we're just saying these barriers are the solution and we're stopping there. It's simply trying to make it a less desirable location to ride, and ultimately it will assist my officers in their deployments in trying to apprehend offenders. It's looking at ideas. When legal implications come into play, unfortunately our hands are tied. I understand your sentiment, and believe me, I understand your concern, but ultimately doing nothing is still ineffective. At least we are attempting to look at seeing how this looks, and from a 12-month period we can also review as to what effect, if any, the barriers have at the locations.
Keep reminding me. Michelle, did you want to come in at all?
I think Vince is with you, isn't he? So he might want to give an update on where we've gone with these barriers. But, you know, Terry's absolutely right. Unfortunately, you know, there are limitations on all those bridleways, etc. And we've got to conform to legal rights within there. So, and that's the same with Hangman's Wood. That's a bridleway through it. So blocking that off, it was not an option, unfortunately. You know, we did look at that. We're looking at all areas across the borough and putting in as much as we can to restrict or to slow down at least, particularly where we know there's children walking on paths, etc. But, you know, unfortunately, there's public rights of way limits what we can do because we can't restrict access to everybody.
Michelle, now we know that they obviously Terry will know now, but now they're using the Persimmon site to come through out into Buxton Road, into King Edward Drive. That is probably something we could help with, because that's where kids walk from the new estate through to Treetops and Woodside. So it might be something we could do there where we can't in other places. I know bridleways. I haven't seen any horses go down bridleways at the moment, but I suppose they do. The one over Long Lane, haven't seen that bridleway used for years. So I think, you know, sometimes if bridleways aren't used, I mean, if you've got quad bikes going down there, then horses are not going to use it, definitely. But thanks, Michelle, for that. Vincent, did you just want to come in? Can I just let Vincent come in, because he might have something just to say towards this, please.
But it would be helpful if I...
Yeah, that's
Can
right.
I just clarify what the issue is, because the issue is not what we're talking about here. So there's an addition.
Just let Vincent come in and we'll see what he has to say. Thank you.
Yeah, when we looked at putting the barriers in, as said, that had to conform to what we could actually put in on the bridleway. When we actually visited the area, when we were looking at it, there were concerns, especially at the Heath and at the other end by Treetops, that a moped or a motorcycle going down there at speed would cause an accident. Whilst I agree that the barriers will not stop a motorbike or a moped or a quad bike, what they will do is slow it down sufficiently that hopefully, if there were to be an accident, we're not looking at the worst case scenario. So we put them in place for that public safety.
So we're well aware of that because we were there in November to do that. The problem with the barriers that have been put in front of the path coming over, with the bridge coming over from over the 1089 onto the heath, is that the fence goes so far this way, then you've got the barriers, so you've got a big wide open space for people to just drive around the barriers. So it's not going to be effective at slowing. I completely understand that it's a bridleway. We understand all of that. We discussed it on the day. We've got to allow access from the heath. But what we're saying is, for this to be effective in slowing bikes down and making them go through a chicane, there has to be extra fencing at the left-hand side of that barrier, because otherwise they'll just come straight down and just go straight onto the heath with a slight turn to the left. That's the issue.
I will look at that and get back to you on that.
Councillor Maldaney's talking about 3 years ago we had a child knocked down there. And she was hurt quite badly.
Well, it was the other end.
It's
the other side.
It's where the houses were and where it goes through to treetops, where you walk through to Woodside and obviously to treetops as well.
Yeah, but we're talking about a different area, but yes.
Yeah, but it's still. I mean, we did a walkabout with the police and in my area, and we came up with, as Michelle knows, we came up with so many places where we could actually physically put a barrier. But then, as the police say, we put a barrier up, then they'll find another way to get in. And Blackshots Field is a hard field to. We can't fence it all off. It's important. I'm hoping that what's coming now will make a difference. You know, we put that PSPO in. Hopefully, that will help, and that will help the police. I was hoping that motion will help the police. So we need those motorbikes out there. We need to do something, because we've had one biker lost his leg, we've had one killed, and we've had a couple of children hurt. So where do we go before a couple of kids really lose their lives, you know? And we need to move forward with this, but we need to have that meeting as well, because that will help.
Yeah, I think we're all on the same page about needing to address this nuisance. Sort of my only concern, and I think Councillor Chukwu's concern, is with that barrier. At the moment, in the present formation, it's not effective, having gone to look at it recently. The other question I had, can you clarify, you said there were four lots of barriers that have been put on in Alsett Heath. Where are the other three?
I think that's my apologies on that one. There's 4 barriers, there's 2 locations, so that's my apologies on that one. We are also looking at the path that goes down through and under the underpass as well for barriers, and we'll be looking at install down there.
Thanks, Vincent. I think if we have that meeting as well, that will clarify an awful lot. If you're quite happy with that, Terry, I think that will be good for members. You know, we need to, especially the hotspots where we've got, you know, real trouble. You know, well, I mean, they're on Blackshots Field now, back on there, and they're just riding right over there. So we need to have that meeting as soon as possible, if that's right with you. I'll send you an email anyway.
Please do.
Okay, but thanks for all your help tonight. Thank you.
No problem at all.
Thanks for coming. Thank you. Thank you, Vincent, very much. And thanks, Michelle. Did you want to come in at all, Michelle, on anything, or are you all right?
I think the only other thing I was just going to add was Councillor Thandy's point about CCTV. And, you know, we do look at all areas for it, and we've had some success. We've got one up at the end of Long Lane, as you know, which allows them to monitor on a weekend to see when the vehicles are pulling up. We've looked desperately down at Colne. CCTV have been down there and done site visit, but unfortunately just not possible down there with the location, and it wouldn't add any value if we did put one up down there. So just to show you, we do look at all sites where CCTV, but obviously, that they're out in rural land. It's not where we've got easy access to put CCTV up, but it's certainly where they park. We would look at it there as well.
Thanks, Michelle. Has everybody got anybody else want to say? Councillor Maldani?
Sorry, it just occurred to me. The other area, of course, was Greyhound Lane, which obviously the council's had, I think, 3 or 4 attempts now to put target hardening in there. And unfortunately, there are some individuals who keep angle grinding or removing those barriers. But I'm just wondered, are there any plans to replace target hardening, or any ideas about what could be done in that area, because that's still quite a common access point.
Michelle, I know Inspector Fisher's gone now. Do you want to come in that, or Vincent, do you want to take anything from that? Okay.
Yeah, I would say if any areas are raised, I'm more than happy to go and have a look with the team to see what can be done.
Michelle, did you want to come in at all, or are you all right?
Well, I was just going to say, public rights of way team have obviously done a lot of work there, but unfortunately it all keeps getting vandalised as soon as they do everything. So I wasn't aware the latest one had been vandalised again, so I'll pick that up with Prow and discuss with Vince afterwards as well.
Okay, lovely. Thanks, Michelle. Cheers. Anybody else got any questions? Are you all right? Yeah? Councillor Chakwa?
Yeah, I just want to understand, because somebody actually talked about using the drones, and I just want to find out, you still considering about using the drones to target those bikers?
This is one that would better be answered by the police. However, to my understanding, the idea with the drones is that if they spot people on their quad bikes or motorbikes, the drone will then follow them then on to where they're getting onto the vehicle that's brought them there, and then the police will then engage with those people on site where they've taken the vehicle to. That's, to my knowledge, the idea with drones.
Chuck, are you all right? You happy with that? Do you want to ask Michelle anything? Or are you all right?
I'm all right.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Michelle. Your input. You going to stay with us, or are you going to go?
I think you want me to cover my community safety slides, don't you?
Okay, thank you. Cheers. Okay. Right, we're on item 6, terms of reference. You've all got in front of you. But I don't know the name that's there. Didn't recognise them. Phil, I didn't recognise you. You've changed. Different hairdo.
It's the weather.
Chair, if I may, I'm going to start this one off. And then what I've got is officers here in the room, as you can see, with me, and we've got Phil and Michelle online that will pick up their individual slides and go through them in a bit more detail. You've all got, hopefully, in front of you a slide pack on a presentation that we've put together, and this is really in terms of reference for overview and scrutiny. I don't think we've done this before, just to go through, you know, the services that we provide, and to give you an overview of all that we do, which can inform then some of the things that are coming forward in the future, and give some ideas to where we're heading. So there's going to be a bit of a mixture here, a bit of a mixed bag of people talking. But I'll start off first of all by saying the introduction, as I've already done. What we cover in broad terms is community safety, prevent duties, waste and recycling, management of environment, including clean and green. We've got Vince here for that. Parks and open spaces and cemeteries, again, which is Vince. Sports development, which I'll pick up on. Management of environment and enforcement, which Phil will pick up on. also environmental protection, and then Gav's going to pick up the last three, which is consumer protections, trading standards, licensing, and animal welfare.
I'll do the I'll do the environmental protection as well,
Brilliant.
because that's ours, not Phil's.
Okay, perfect. That's great stuff. Okay, so if we go through the slides as they are, I've just noticed that we've lost Michelle now. So I'm hoping.
No, I'm here.
Oh, you still there?
I'm here.
Perfect. I can't see you. That's all.
It's embodied voice, basically.
Michelle, do you want to start off with your community safety elements, please?
I will do indeed. Thank you, Darren. Good evening, everyone. So community safety partnerships are statutory, established under the Crime and Disorder Act in 1998. And the council is one of the statutory members of that partnership, alongside Essex Police, the probation service, the clinical commissioning group, which obviously is due to change on the 1st of July to the integrated health group, and Essex Fire and Rescue Service. We also work closely to our community and voluntary services as well. We've got a legal duty to work together to tackle local crime and disorder in the area. Every year we have to complete a strategic assessment to identify our priorities. This is based on a risk assessment matrix, which is a combination of both qualitative and quantitative data. That allows us to not just highlight the high volume crimes such as burglary, but the high harm crimes such as domestic abuse, and hidden harms such as hate crime and honour-based violence. This year we highlighted 9 priorities, so that's quite a lot for us, but we've published these within our delivery plan, and that delivery plan gets updated every year. So our 9 priorities are tackling disproportionality in relation to violence against women and girls, breaking the cycle of domestic abuse, and we've split those 2 priorities out this year in line with national thinking and in line with the PFCC priorities. And we do have a duty to align ourselves and take account of the Police Fire Crime Commissioner priorities as well. Our 3rd priority is violence and vulnerability, which is around gang-related activity and offensive weapons. 4th one is tackling counter-extremism and terrorism, reducing harm to and safeguarding victims from hate crime, tackling community-based antisocial behaviour and safeguarding victims, and obviously you've just had an update on probably the highest complaint around antisocial behaviour of our off-road motorbike nuisance. 7th one is human trafficking and modern day slavery and organised immigration crime. 8th is safer streets through increased visibility and community engagement. And finally, tackling offending, and actually there is a duty on both the council and the CSPs to reduce offending rates. The proposal for the year at the moment on the forward plan is to bring you 3 reports. One as a general overview of community safety and updating on all areas of the partnership, but then there'll be a detailed report later in the year on VARG and domestic abuse, and that'll be about our response to the new DA duty, and also we have a new strategy which will be in place from April next year. And then we'll also bring a separate paper on prevent and counter-terrorism and extremism. And again, that's because our strategy is due to be refreshed next year. And if I just move on to the prevent slide, I've put a separate slide in just to explain our prevent duties. 2015, the Counter-Terrorism Act was updated to place a duty on a number of agencies, of which the council is one of them. Our prevent strategy outlines how partners will work together with our communities to safeguard and support those vulnerable to radicalisation, and also to stop people becoming terrorists or support terrorism. The main part of prevent is around safeguarding. I don't know if you're aware, but the ratings of the national threat level is regularly updated, and it was currently reduced in February back down to substantial. However, that does mean that an attack is still likely. What I always say though is there is no greater risk to Thurrock than any other areas of the UK. We follow the national strategy in terms of identifying and promoting, challenging and developing communities' capacity. We safeguard to ensure that our children and vulnerable adults are reduced from exposure to extremism. At the moment, online is one of the greatest risks, and obviously that involves our young people. And then managing our risk through our channel panel, which again is a statutory duty on us to host a panel monthly which discusses any referrals for those individuals who are at risk of being drawn into terrorism. And then we've got a detailed action plan. And I won't go through all those points on there, but we're obviously working very closely across all partners to deliver on those parts. Our two key priorities for this year, based on our annual assessment of need, which is looked at with the Home Office and then benchmark, has highlighted two areas of development. And the first is communication and the second is engagement. And there's a paper going to our Hidden and Extreme Harms Committee next week on this, because obviously I think, members have a huge part to play in this and can really support and help us deliver that. So I will stop there, and I think I'm going to take questions as we go through for each person, if that's all right, Chair. That's what we agreed.
Thanks, Michelle. No, it's brilliant. Just reading on the first slide, when you put women and girls, I noticed you've put men and boys on the sort of added on. So I hope the same is applied to men and boys as well as women and girls. I know we just think women and girls are, but I think we've talked about this before, haven't we? And it is men and boys that are at risk as well. So it's nice to see that on there. I haven't really got any questions. Can I open it up to the committee if there's any questions from anybody?
No questions. It was just like what you've just said about boys, males.
Yeah.
I thought that I put one the other. I'm glad to see that.
Michelle, you're still there, aren't you?
I am, but sorry, I couldn't hear anything.
No, it's all right. I just said I think you've come off light there. Nobody's got any questions, Joy. You must be doing such a good job, as I know you do. So just to thank you for all the hard work that you do. You know, not many people see it, but as I come on your committee and you come on mine, we find out about what we're all doing. So it's good. But thank you for all your hard work. Much appreciated.
Thank you. Appreciated.
You're welcome. Back to you, Darren.
Yes, thanks, Chair. Just picking up on the waste and recycling element in the pack you've got there. The council has a statutory requirement to collect and dispose of household waste generated by residents of the borough. This function is, as you know, operated by an in-house team, and currently we collect residual waste, recycling and kitchen waste on a weekly basis and garden waste on a fortnightly basis. The service also provides a paid-for bulky waste collection service where residents can arrange for large items to be collected from their residential addresses, and we dispose of them for them. And this is collected and controlled through an external contract. Council offers commercial waste collection service to businesses and customers as well. The trade waste sales strategy was created back in May 2016 and incorporates the strategic direction to ensure that external income targets are achieved. The commercial waste team have been set ambitious targets for trade waste. And it's part of the medium-term financial planning strategy, the MTFP, and this requires us to work and perform in a similar manner to the way that a private company operates. It's very commercial based. It's quite unique in the way that they operate, and the commercial teams are quite precious in the way that they operate as well, so we need to be competitive with those. The Council has a statutory obligation under Section 51 of the Environment Protection Act to provide residents with a facility to dispose of their bulky waste, and that's done through the Household Waste and Recycling Centre down in Buckingham Hill Road in Lingford, and that's the only site that the council have to be able to do this.
Thanks, Darren. I mean, I know you probably don't want to go into too much detail but I just wanted to bring up, I've had a few complaints lately, and I know because I've been there myself, but I hate to say it, but the steps up to are dangerous for a lot of people. Now, I've got a cracked knee at the moment. I can't get up and down, and although the guys are very helpful, sometimes they'll say, I can't help you. And I was lucky the other day because there was 2 women who actually took my rubbish up, and I was grateful for that because I couldn't do anything. And across other boroughs, it's a better... Sometimes they run it better than we do, because I know in Lincolnshire they have ones where you drive round and you drop your rubbish off as you go round. But the council workers are helpful. They'll take it off the people if they can't manage, because we've got quite a few elderly people who take things up there who obviously can't do those steps. It's just good. We talk about health and safety, but it's a wonder we haven't had anybody fall down those stairs, because they are really dangerous, especially in the wet and the way that's going. So I don't know. I know there are things in place, and I don't know whether you want to go into that at the moment, but I just want to put that on board, that I've had a few complaints about that.
Yeah, I'm happy to take away any complaints. I mean, what the teams down there should be doing is asking people if people should be asking them if they need assistance. We don't like to ask people because some people are not very receptive to asking them, but they should be helping. If people ask for help, they should be helping. So I need to know if there's cases where that's happened and they're refusing to help. We know that the situation with the way the site is set up, I mean, I've got to say it's much better now than it was before, but in an ideal world, you're absolutely right. The more modern sites have areas where you can drive up and reverse into and drop the stuff into the containers, which, you know, when we were looking at the development of the site, that's some of the things that we had in mind, but then that's been put on hold, as you know. So we've got to work with what we've got. And the teams down there should be assisting, so I would urge anybody that needs assistance, when you go into the site, just ask and say that, yourself included, councillor, just go in there and say that you need some assistance, and they should assist, and if they don't, then let me know, and then we'll pick it up with the teams.
I mean, I don't like to complain, but
no, absolutely.
I was on my own.
That's what they should be doing.
I had a stick, and because I can't get upstairs, and you know when you go there, you're going to have to get up the steps. But I can't, and it was just an odd time I went over there. And they're usually really helpful.
That's unusual, I must admit.
But yeah, it is. And I just wanted to make people aware that I've had a few complaints now of people not being helped. So, and that doesn't do the council any good, because they'll go back, tell someone else, and that doesn't. I'd rather you know. Than
the manager of the site will take that on board, because she's very, she's very adamant that they should be assisting and helping, so I'll pass that back and we'll pick it up with the team.
Yeah, I've had a couple of complaints on the traffic. When it's obviously weekends, both sides of the roads are blocked, people are trying to do it right. What can you do about that?
Well, again, we were looking at an individual entrance into the site when we were looking at the redevelopment of the site. But because that's not now going ahead, what we've done is we've used the risk assessment process to look at the health and safety side of things, and that includes the road access in and out as well. And we've found that by limiting the amount of cars going in, although you would think it creates more traffic, people understand that that's now happening, and we don't see from what we're picking up from various sources from inside the site, we shouldn't be seeing the same sort of traffic problems that we had before. Of course, you're going to get that on the individual days when people want to clear out their garages and their sheds and so on and so forth. But indications are that these controls that we've put in place are limiting the amount of vehicles going in there, and that's helping with the traffic situation. But I'm happy to look at individual cases if you let me know, councillor, when you've been down there on site and there's been traffic going in and out.
Just go back quickly about the brown bins, Darren. I think sometimes people have lost track of when the brown bins are going to be taken, and I think if there's something on the website or well, obviously we've got a lot of elderly who don't do the website. You know, I feel like a record sometimes, but they haven't got the facilities to look. So is there something else we can do that can get out to people so we get in that routine again? I probably think during COVID and the strike it got a little bit pushed out. So
yeah, it's definitely on the website, Council. It's updated on a regular basis, and what we were hoping is, as you say, that people will get into the routine, and because some of the situations that's been going on has not helped matters, but it is on there, and as you quite rightly also say, that not everybody has access and not everybody sees that. So it's something that we're looking at communicating going forward, and how we can touch some of those people that don't have access. But it is on the website, and people can access it or ask people to see when their collections are.
Thanks, Councillor Maldini.
Thank you, Chair. I think we all acknowledge that it's been a bad couple of years for waste collection. There's been some major service disruption with one thing and another. I understand from the portfolio holder that he's bringing a papers committee regarding reporting what constitutes a misbin, etc., and reporting in general. Can you give us an indication of when we expect that to come to committee?
I've got no timelines on that at the moment, Councillor, but I'm happy to come back to you on that when I get a firm date from that process. You're right, it's something that we're looking at the moment that the portfolio holders asked us to look at. So as soon as I've got a firm date, I'll come back to you. I don't want to misinform you.
Thank you. Got people who are threatening to stop paying the bin portion of their council tax, which I wouldn't advise anybody to do, by the way. And the other question that I had is on the recycling KPI. Obviously, we had the assurance in full council from the portfolio holder that that will be reintroduced and reinstated. And I wondered, when is that happening?
Again, I haven't got no firm date on when that's happening, but I'm happy to come back to you and notify you when that is going to happen.
Thank you.
Could you make sure we all get that down, please? Thank you. Anybody else got any questions, Councillor Chukwa?
Hi, Darren. I'm not sure if you are aware that in Chadwell we've got only one street cleaner in Chadwell, and you're talking about the population of Chadwell is about 11,000 people, and we've got only one cleaner. Are you aware of
that? I know that last year we did look at this, and to my knowledge we have two. What I would do is I will speak with the team manager that covers your area for street cleansing, confirm that with him. It may well be that someone is either off on long-term sick or hasn't been replaced. I will make sure that you have that answer, and I'll get that back to you by email if that's okay.
Councillor Rigby.
Thank you, Chair. Hi. Going back a bit to Councillor Redsel's comment on the difficulty in accessing the steps and things. You have a paid-for collection service, but what happens to, say, disabled residents that can't physically get to the site? Is there any discount or any offering to them for collection? What's the caption there?
The bulky, so there's two options, obviously. If people can get to the HWRC, then they can use that free of charge. For those people that haven't got access to vehicles to get them down there, or just can't physically do it themselves, there is the bulky waste collection service. I mean, there isn't any discount for disabled residents. We've looked at this in the round and looked at the costing across various different other authorities, and we're quite competitive with what's happening across all of the councils. So we don't think that it's an expensive service, but we do recognise that some people may have difficulty in paying. With regards to getting the equipment out or getting the stuff out that people need to get rid of, We can't come into the actual property to get it, but our team will help as well if possible, Vince, won't they? To assist where they can, if it can be, brought to the access point of the property.
Yes, please. So you can't. So if someone has a fridge freezer, like an elderly lady on their own who's got no one to help them, there's no council staff that can help that person from getting the fridge freezer out of the property. Is that right?
We do help as far as we can, if we can.
Yeah, we would help where we can. Generally, it's from outside the property, and normally you would have someone that would have taken that fridge freezer out to put the new fridge freezer in, or there is generally members of family that assist. If there were to be a case that a resident was to contact us for assistance, of course we'd look at how we could help.
Can I just come in there? Did you want to come back, Councillor Rigby, or anything? Can I just help out there? There is, I think it's either Mind or CVS have got people who will go out and help people downstairs with it or out to the back of their property. I think I've used it a couple of times for elderly residents who physically can't get it down the stairs if they've got a settee or something and they can't get it physically down. But there is, I don't know, Vincent, is it CVS or is it Mind?
Off the top of my head,
No.
I can look into it.
I can't remember where I got him from, but I found him from someone else. I'm sure it was CVS. It was someone who, they do it in their own time. They don't ask for any, remittance for it. They do it just to help out. So it's just on the books to help out people. So it might be good to look into. It might help Councillor Rigby if she's got someone that needs help.
No, thank you. Thank you.
I must say that you guys are doing a good job, Vin, Darren, because most times when we bring issues to you guys, the way you attend to it, is great. You guys are doing a good job. Yeah, one more question, right? I'm not sure the Council of Modani has touched about that. Your plans, your proposed plans for fortnightly collection of green beans, is it still gonna take place or something like that?
Yeah, absolutely. What we want to do first of all is get the service, as Councillor Muldooney's pointed out, not been in a good place for a while. So we want to get the service up and running and properly delivering what it should be delivering on, and making sure that collections are being carried out on the correct days, which we've had some problems with in the past. So once we've got that in place, then yeah, we will be looking to introduce those changes.
Thanks. One more thing is that, because I'm just thinking about large families, right? And when you introduce things like that, how do you think they're going to cope with their waste?
Well, I mean, I live in Malden, and I've got myself, my wife, and my son, and my daughter-in-law, and my little granddaughter living with me. So I've got quite a house full, and I get a fortnightly collection for refuse. I get a fortnightly collection for recycling, and I get a weekly collection for food waste. And I must admit, the bin that I've got is it's a smaller bin than what we have here. It's a 220, not a 440. And I looked at it and I thought, blimey, this is not going to happen. But surprisingly enough, once you separate your food out and you recycle as much as you can, you don't end up with having too much waste at the end of it. So, we're confident that it will be the case. If residents require an additional recycling bin because they recycle well, then we can accommodate that. But we think it's going to be okay. And as I say, with my experience, then it does actually work.
Can I just ask, Vincent, the people that go around, as Councillor Chuckwell was saying, the street cleansing guys, they're usually quite good, could we ask them, please, that if they go along and there is a garage turn in the side and there's rubbish down there, they could just veer into there. I know what you're going to say, it's down to housing. It's housing land probably and not highway land, but we need that join up, Vincent, because if we don't join up together, we're not going to get anywhere.
I agree. It's something that we do clear from certain portions of housing land, and if however it's an area that has a caretaker service, we would naturally assume that the caretaker service is going to clear that land. If it's parts that we are responsible under the SLA to clear, I would expect my staff to go on and clear it as part of their round. So if there is things that we need to report through to housing, we're more than happy to do so, but we will work towards within the SLA and also to make sure that we're using our resources effectively.
Thanks, Vincent. I know they're, most of them will, if you ask them, they will go down there if you thank them for the job they're doing, and we've got some good, as Councillor Chuckler said, we have got some good guys out there who really do work hard, and I appreciate what goes on, so I know most of it, what goes on, so I keep my eye everywhere.
Yeah, just wanted to say what Councillor Chuckle said, the street team clean. I see him every day. I've got a business in Little Thurrock. I mean, Catalin, obviously, it's his team. Outstanding. See him every day, see the different drivers. Have to say our borough is very clean compared to other boroughs, doing a great job. And obviously Darren as well with the dustbins. Obviously we had the issues with the protests and all that. Everyone's all panicking, bins are not getting collected, back on track, so well done on that as well. Excellent job.
Thank you, Kaz.
Can I just say that most of the things that let us down is Essex County, highways who let us down, like parts coming off the M25 getting onto the A13. It's those bits of road where the lorry drivers chuck everything out, and that is just, that's been there 10 years, because most of it is getting buried now. There's such a lot in there. Can we not pressurise Highways Essex or whoever it comes under? I know it's under Essex, and it's not down to us.
Yeah, it's the highway. They've changed their name again now, haven't they? Highways England. Thank you. The National Highway. Keep on changing. I keep on getting confused, but it's owned. The road is owned by them. Most parts of the A13, apart from up from, and Vince will correct me on this, from the Five Bells down to just Alsicott, just after the Alsicott, which is our responsibility. But you're right, Councillor. We have spoken to them and to Connect Plus, who are the contractor that work on their behalf, to try to get them. They've got a different frequency in a different way in which they operate things, haven't they? So it's not quite the same as us, which means that it can get dirtier than we would like it to before they have to respond to anything. But I know that our highways colleagues, and I probably Phil's on the line, so probably Phil has also been involved in some of the work that we've been trying to do to get them to tidy up those areas. So we continue to do that to try to get them tidied, Councillor.
So need some lobbying, eh? A little bit. Councillor Pearce?
Yes, you may be aware of this one. It's the little row of cottages opposite the wreck in Aveley High Street. They've been told to put their black sacks on the edge of Dacre Avenue until they can get a recycling bin there for them. Now, the thing is, it's not a very good place to put this because it's right near the high street, and obviously overnight foxes come, they get ripped open and everything, and it's now attracting fly tipping there. And it's happened. Oh, I don't know the address. One of our councillors has reported it, and they said it wasn't a very good idea there anyway. But one of our Aveley councillors, he's moved it himself because it's getting so disgusting.
Well, I'll have to go down and have a look. So
yeah.
The location again?
It's Dacre Avenue. It's just by where the old telephone box was. I don't know if he was aware of it, and I thought, while I'm here on the committee, I might
Yeah,
as well
no,
bring
I'm
it
happy
to
to take that away,
notice.
Councillor.
Yeah.
I'm not aware of it, but,
No,
but
right,
I can definitely look into that and come back to you on that.
Right, thank you.
Any questions on this bit?
Thanks, Chair. I'm going to hand you over to Vince. Now he's going to go through some of your services.
Good evening, Chair and Committee. Within Clean and Green, we cover a number of functions. We provide the street cleansing service throughout the borough. The key focus continues to be on high-use areas such as town centres and shopping parades. In addition to the weekly rounds, a weekend service operates to ensure that all the litter bins continue to be emptied over the weekend and accumulations of litter are removed, as well as the actual litter picking, detritus removal. We also do graffiti removal as well as part of the service. That is both upon environment assets and also quite often within housing for them as part of the SLA. I've just checked the rota, Councillor Chuckwu, and we do have 2 street cleaners in Chadwell, 1 east, 1 west. So I can confirm that. So if you have any further detail, please let me know and I'll have that address for you. We also cover grounds maintenance. We provide a comprehensive service across the borough. The teams are responsible for a variety of functions, including grass cutting, hedge cutting, shrub pruning, and this includes on housing estates, highway land, and also a number of the public rights of way. Arboriculture, we have our tree team out there. We've had all of the trees within the borough mapped upon our ArbTrack mapping system, and this also plans our inspections as well and lets us know the frequency. It prioritised those trees that needed to be worked on. We've now worked our way through all of the high and medium priority trees, and we're now working on the low priority trees throughout the borough. And when the next inspected, we'll go through that process again. In addition to these functions, we have the parks and open spaces within the borough. We maintain those to a high level. The service conducts weekly inspections of the 69 parks and 25 open spaces to ensure that the play equipment is compliant and safe to use. All of our people checking the play equipment are qualified to the RPII operational level, which is one above what they actually need to be trained to. This, to my opinion, gives us a better understanding of the play equipment that they're looking at and make sure that their recommendations are have more weight to it when we look at new equipment or replacement of old equipment.
Can I just come in on that Vincent, before you just move on? Councillor Jeffreys was going to come back to us with the charge that was being put on if there was a community put in play stuff or benches or whatever, and he's not come back yet. So can you just look into that for us? The charge.
Of course, I'll look into it and come back to you, Councillor.
Cheers.
The service is also responsible for the maintenance of 12 burial sites, including 7 cemeteries and 5 closed churchyard. This includes the grass cutting, shrub maintenance, and also we have a team that carries out the grave digging and administrative functions in support of the burials that take place across the year. A cemetery strategy is due to be presented to this committee on the 8th of September. We also have the Country Park Rangers who are responsible for the maintenance and management of the valuable 400-acre site that has special scientific interest and protected land at Langdon Hills and also at Coalhouse Fort. This includes the scheduled ancient monument, and Coalhouse Fort is also a wetland site designated to be of international importance and is under conservation. The conservation of rare butterflies and bees at these 2 council managed parks has been recognised by Natural England. So there are a lot of different functions that fall under the Clean and Green Service.
Thanks, Vincent. Can I just ask, obviously I phoned you up the other day, but how many of the cemeteries are actually locked at night and how many are not? Have we got that information?
They're currently not. We're not locking the cemeteries. We did it as a trial, and we found that the level of antisocial behaviour, if you look at, we've had figures through from the police on the level of antisocial behaviour that we have in our cemeteries. I know that it is of concern to a number of councillors. I would say that we have never locked our pedestrian walkways through the cemeteries, and would there be is any antisocial behaviour that we have within the cemeteries a byproduct of there being a vehicle access at that point in time, or would there have still been the antisocial behaviour if people had just walked into the cemetery? If we get a spike in antisocial behaviour, I'm more than happy to look again at what measures we can put in place to try and deal with it, whether that be through engagement with our partners in the police, CCTV, or the possible options of whether or not we look at gating in future. If we look at gating in future, I would like to look at what more automated solutions we can put in place to make this happen, because I'd like to be able to keep the cemeteries open as late as practically possible to allow residents that work or have mobility issues to be able to come and see their loved ones for as long a time period as possible.
Thanks, Vincent. I think Councillor Madoney probably come in on this, but I've had a few complaints about Chadwell one with cars racing up and down, but I've just told them to get in touch with their Chadwell councillors. Is it something, I obviously don't want to get involved with another ward that's not mine, but we've had a few complaints have been put through to the police that guns were in there and they were shooting them. So I think that's been reported to the police, so I don't know whether Councillor Muldowney was told of that. I think she was, but she'll obviously come in.
Thank you, Councillor Edsel. Yeah, we do have an issue in Chadwell. There are a group of friends and family, I think it's mainly friends, that with one particular grave there who only like to go there at night, and sometimes there is quite loud partying, shall we say, that has been reported. There was also, I'm not sure if it was established if there was guns, but it was reported that there was a gunshot that was heard, and a woman screaming. There were two separate incidents that the police were aware of. I think the first one was to do with the group of people that do go in there at night to visit their friend's grave, which I'm not sure whether sort of 11 o'clock at night, do we really want to stretch it to those kind of hours? I mean, we want to give people time with their loved ones, but I mean, I think a line needs to be drawn somewhere. Do people really need to be in the cemetery at 11 o'clock at night? Is that really the only time that they can go and visit their friend's grave if it's causing, an antisocial situation for nearby residents? And there was a separate incident which the police attended outside of the graveyard where I think it was an assault on a woman. So it may be that they're two separate instances, but those both were picked up and reported to the police.
I agree that 11 o'clock wouldn't be the sort of time that I would expect someone to be visiting a loved one within the cemetery. But as I have said, I don't know whether or not the locking of the gates would prohibit them going in, because if they wanted access, they could just walk into the cemetery anyway.
Why can't we look at locking the pedestrian gates as well then, where if we've got an issue like that's regular?
It's not something that we've ever done. It would be the first part of it. If we need to lock the gates, there needs to be a mechanism by which we lock the gates. If that's the case and it is our staff that lock them, we would lock both the vehicle and pedestrian gates to the cemetery when those staff finish for the day, which would be 3:30 Monday through Thursday and 3 o'clock on a Friday. And that would, for me, we can't do that because that would restrict all the access for those that work during the week at those points.
Is there the possibility of, I mean, there certainly was with Chadwell Cemetery when this issue came up, when all the graves were stripped. Is there a possibility of having volunteer residents actually lock the gates a time later than that?
I really do like working with the community and with volunteers and residents. However, if something happens and that resident does not open or close the gate, we could end up, in theory, on a Saturday with the gates not being opened, which would then, I believe, cause us far more issues with complaints than what we would ever have through actually leaving the gates open. It's just that they're sometimes not as reliable as if we had another way of opening and closing the gates. For me, if we were to look at the vehicle gates, I'd like to look at what new technology is in place for us to be able to do that, and whether or not that is cost effective for us to do so.
Sorry, Chair, just to add to what Vince is saying. I mean, I think I can understand the concerns. I'm not suggesting that it's not bad, because you wouldn't expect people to go into the cemetery at that time of night. But perhaps we can work with Michelle and the police on trying to solve that issue, rather than, it seems like most instances we're not having too many problems with the cemeteries, touch wood. So let's see if we can work on that isolated incident and try to resolve that one, if we can. Happy to do that.
I think we've also got to remember with Chadwell Cemetery, there is a bit right round the back near the rector's house and it's funny because since we've had the trees cut down there, it seems to have got them congregating there or whatever. But I don't think the police know that goes right the way round the back of that area. So they'll ride round the street where they've had the incident reported, and they'll take that as the street, and it's not. You know, they've got to realise that they've got to go down the cemetery and sort of walk in, you know, because it's round the back, so they think they're out the way of everybody, I think. So that's a bit of an out the way.
We could pick that up with the police and with Michelle. And just to echo what Vince has said, Councillor Maldoni, well, we would like to work with residents and, you know, and committees to try to help us out. The only thing in this instance, and my cousin works in one of the cemeteries, not in this borough, but he actually lives in the cemetery, and he often has people knocking on his door saying that I've been locked in because they're crouching down doing bits and pieces, and when people look in to make sure that there's nobody there, they just don't see them because they're crouching down. And what we wouldn't want to do is have people trying to get hold of residents to try to let them out. Just using that as an example. But
Councillor Rigby.
Thank you, Chair. It's just a small point. I'm just interested to see that Langdon Hills comes under Thurrock, because I thought that was just in the Basildon boundary. Is it actually in Thurrock?
Yeah, it is a strange one, but yes, that part of it does come under us.
Quite out the way, Thurrock. We go out quite a way. People don't realise how far we get out.
It's just I thought the sign was when you come out of the country park and you're driving back to Thurrock, it says welcome to Thurrock. That's what I
can help here. I can help here. You are right, and the reason that Langdon Hills comes under us is when they did the disaggregation, when Thurrock became unitary, we had to have a certain amount of country parks, and I don't think there was enough in the actual, so they allocated Langdon Hills. And you're right, I was there yesterday, I think.
I'm not sure if you are aware that in Wickham Park, the slides, you know, it's no longer there. I mean, because the parents they've actually raised a concern that if you can help to bring it back for the kids to play with, that would be good.
Apologies. I will look at. I'll speak to the team manager who has responsibility for play, and I'll discuss this with him and look at what equipment is to go in.
All right. You're going to get back to me, yeah?
I'll get back to you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Are you doing sport, Darren?
It is me again.
Okay.
Chair, yeah, I'll pick up the sports development. Whoa. So it's me again. So the Recreation and Leisure Service is responsible for the management and development of sports and leisure infrastructure, facilities, partnerships and activities across the borough. Also with the responsibility of developing strategies to ensure that Thurrock has future sports and leisure facilities, the infrastructure which meets the needs that its residents wants, and addresses some of the current issues regarding the ageing facilities that we've got in the borough. The recent adopted active place strategy, which came here to CGS a while ago, is made up of a suite of studies and strategies, including play pitch strategy, the indoor built facilities strategy, active travel strategy, and the open space needs assessment. These strategies link very much in with the local plan and encourage residents to be active by regularly taking part in sports activities. The active place strategy helps shape and mould Thurrock's leisure and sports offer for the next 10 or 15 years. So what we will be doing is we will be bringing various elements of the active place strategy back to CGS as we go through and as we develop further.
Could I please ask that Jahur get some of the football playing on the heath? Because 350,000 was used as 106 money from the Persimmon site in my ward to put new changing rooms in there, but we can't seem to get them off. We don't mind them playing sport, but it seems to be overtaking Blackshots a little bit. We've got Broadview Avenue where we've got people parking in there. We've obviously got yellow lines going in there, but they're parking in front of people's driveways now because they don't want to go around to the car park and then walk across. And I love to see kids playing sport. I've got nothing against playing sport, but I just think perhaps we could ask them because they didn't know about the Heath, where they can actually play football on there and the facilities are there. So I don't know if we're still using the facilities, but all that money being spent on that area, it seems that, and I don't want to go against the Chadwell councillors, but it seems to me that we could share it. It seems to be we've got it all on Blackshots and there's not places for people to walk sometimes because it's all football, you know.
Yeah, I know there is activity on sports activity on the Heath, Chair, but I will pick it up with Jahur and just find out what's been spent.
Yeah, sorry, this is turning into a bit of a casework session. I'm not quite sure how appropriate it is for overview and scrutiny, but anyway, just to say, I mean, there are regular football matches on the Heath as a whole itinerary. We also have problems with parking and littering as well. That's the other big one. You know, I don't want to shunt a problem from one place to another. Maybe some enforcement in the areas where people are parking might be a better way of addressing it.
Yeah, just to answer that one, Councillor, and thanks for Gav for reminding me that the car park was temporary use, wasn't it, for
COVID?
For the COVID,
so that curtailed the activities for a while.
Parking may have been caught by that, but we often write to the clubs using the pitches and remind them to clear up after them, and we've taken some enforcement action. We've actually got Phil's on the line now, and his teams have helped us out as well. So if there are instances, if you can report them through to us, Councillor, we'll make sure of that.
I have reported some instances really about the littering, and I had a reply from Jahur saying that there was nothing he could do in terms of enforcement because there was no proof that it was left by the football clubs. Although, you know, I mean, the littering's not there before the football match and it's there after the football match, which kind of speaks to it being there from the football match.
It gives it away, really, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, we write to the clubs, so that I'm not quite sure why Jahura said that, but we write to the clubs to remind them of their responsibilities, not only for, because sometimes they leave the facilities, the changing rooms in a bit of a mess, but also to remind them to take away their, let's say, orange pills and whatever else they leave at half time. So no, we can do that again.
Thank you. My question was, where does play fit into this? Because we're talking about sport and development, but obviously play and playgrounds and children having somewhere to play is really important for social, mental and physical development, and really, really important, obviously, in the recovery from COVID. And obviously we need places like this to fit in with our obesity strategy and tackling that borough-wide programme. So where does play sit within it, and are there any proposals for developing play in the borough?
Yeah, I'll start off, because I know that Vince will want to come in on this one. So there's a bit of a crossover here between what Vince and Jahur do in this area with regards to play, and what you're referring to, play equipment and the facilities that children can use to play. Vince normally carries out the maintenance of the areas, and Jahur is mainly looking at new things and what we can do, bringing in additional funding and improving the site. So play is very much part of both, really. I know we've got sports development for Jahur here. It crosses over the two areas, but Vince will probably want to say something about some of the park improvement stuff.
Yeah, I work closely with Jahur to look at the parks improvement. We are drafting a document together that will go into the portfolio holder, and I'm sure that there'll be some work on that to come round to this committee at some point fairly soon. We are looking at the play value for each site. We had a play value assessment done on the last time we had our annual inspection. So it's very much looking at what we have as the offer, and is it in the best place? Is there a potential for some redistribution, and so that we're getting the right play at the right place?
Thanks, Vincent. I think just what Councillor Maldoni just said, we are an overview and scrutiny, and if some of the things come up in our ward, it's sometimes the only place that members, even new members, can actually see officers. So I think it's some place that we have to bring up certain things that we need to. So I try and stay off my ward as much as I can, because I know I can get to Vincent, but it's not all new councillors know how to get through to some officers. So I think if we're doing our job properly, we've got to really overview and scrutinise everything. So, environment, are we still with you, Darren?
Yeah, I'm not sure if this is actually related to what you do. I just want to find out if is football part of the things you do, like, for instance, Grace Athletic Football Club, they haven't got no stadium, they haven't got no land. So I'm thinking, is it part of the things you do?
Not. We only manage the football teams or the clubs that are associated with using the facilities that we provide. I mean, we do work with Sports England on various aspects of football in particular, and with various sports, but football in particular. So it would be, if it was Grays Athletic itself, it would be something that will be a council wide, more of a corporate aspect rather than what we would deal with individually.
I think it is something that's being looked at, Grays Athletic. They have asked if they can speak, and I've said that if they want to come and give us a talk on what they want, but I think it is as we said, it is a corporate thing that is ongoing. As I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, but Grays Athletic haven't got any money, and we can't find any land at the moment where they want it. And I think a couple of places they have said it's not in that right place. because wherever they're going to be or want to be, they have to have a way in and out, and there aren't many of those places around. And I think they've asked to be near Blackshots, but there's no in and out. There's only the car park, and I think. But I've asked them if they want to come and talk to us. They can, because I think they can come and give us their view on what they want and what they would like. But I'm sure Darren knows quite a bit about what Grays Athletic would like, and most clubs would like. They don't want to share, because they have got the other football club, is it near Aveley, that they could share with, but they don't want to share. So
they are sharing with Aveley, actually. By discussing the money as well. They don't want their own ground. And again, they talk about if the old Thurrock Football Club, Thurrock Football Club somewhere in there, Thurrock Football Club before, because it's no more that they're no longer playing or active, but they're saying if they can use that ground, that that's part of the thing they're looking at.
Trouble is rugby. You said rugby, the rugby club on Blackshots.
No,
not the rugby club. Sorry.
Thurrock Football Club. Is off
near the hotel.
Oh, that's the one I was talking about. Yeah, I'm sharing it with them. I thought they were sharing it with them. Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. Well, if we invite them here, just to give them a voice, they can just tell us what they require, and we'll take that away, and perhaps that will be in the sports strategy. Councillor Tandy, do you want to come in?
Yeah, you've got it down here. The active play strategy helps shape and mould Thurrock Legends sports offer for the next 10 years. How many 3G pitches does the council own?
At the moment, we don't have any that's directly owned by us. The schools, some of the schools have 3G pitches, but we're looking at introducing at least 2, maybe 3, in the near future. So that's something that we're definitely looking at.
Is that we're just looking at, or
that's what we're proposing?
Is Lakeside not? We don't own that. Well, we did the funding for that.
Yeah, it's not.
I know. I work with that, so I know.
Yeah, it's not managed or owned by us, council. It's the Thurrock Football Foundation, I want to say.
So did we sell the land off, or because it was ours, wasn't it, in the first place? Yeah, it was.
I need to look at that.
Please. Yeah. Because I forget who I work with now, but we work together.
So would these 3G pitches be related to schools where they're going to build, or just solely for the council?
No, the 3G pitches that are in place are owned by or run by schools. The new ones that we're looking at will be ours in our parks and open spaces, and they're used by residents. So they'll be ours. With Phil, Chair? Yeah, he's been
Phil, sorry to keep you waiting. He's probably gone now. He's probably got so fed up.
Not at all.
Okay.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening, councillors. Okay, so as per the slide, some of the things that we deal with in terms of environmental enforcement is abandoned vehicles, untaxed vehicles, fly tipping, graffiti, fly posting, illegal waste carriers, some highway offences, and some aspects of antisocial behaviour and enforcement, unauthorised encampments, and anti-idling outside schools. We have a team of 6 environmental enforcement officers, 2 of which are on short-term contracts. So over the last year, we've received up to 1,500 service requests for various issues, and up to 240 members' inquiries. So what we've been doing is we've been working in close partnership with Essex Police to address environmental offences such as fly tipping and unlicensed waste carriers. and we've conducted a significant amount of pop-ups with the police to tackle those type of offences. We're targeting and reducing graffiti offences whilst evidence gathering and collecting data and quickly removing the tags with Vince's team. We're supporting Essex Police on Operation Caesar, targeting garages being used to store stolen vehicles or vehicles concerned in antisocial behaviour of quad bikes and motorcycles as such. Working closely with Essex farmers and the rural engagement team to tackle fly tipping on rural land, and addressing antisocial behaviour on grass verges caused by HGV, nuisance parking. We've been enforcing the public space protection orders, addressing the issue of antisocial car racing in West Thurrock with Essex Police. We've also joint patrols with the Clean and Green team, targeting early morning fly tipping hotspots, which has been quite productive. And patrols with parking enforcement and police addressing the issues of anti-social parking and vehicle idling outside schools. So the Environment Enforcement team with Essex Town Police team have taken part in 27 operations so far over the last year to tackle a wide range of issues, including antisocial behaviour, breaches of West Thurrock PSPO, tackling vehicle cruising, tackling the abuse of nitrous oxide canisters and fly tipping related offences, resulting in a number of fixed penalty notices being issued for various waste offences, cars seized for insurance related issues, and led to other arrests for other offences by the police, of course, but in partnership whilst working with us. We've also deployed rural cameras in hotspot areas, which has led to 44 fixed penalty notices being issued for fly tipping and 8 vehicles seized because they've been used in the commission of an offence of fly tipping. So the Environmental Enforcement Twilight team was set up in October 2020 to enable the environment team to respond to ASB and environmental offences in the late evening and operate between the hours of 11 a.m. and 2 a.m. in the morning, Tuesdays to Saturday. The team regularly patrol ASB hotspots, and they have, with their investigations, resulted in 735 fixed penalty notices being issued in relation to fly tipping, littering, urinating, fly posting, duty of care, and for breaches of community protection notices. Also 16 notices in relation to duty of care, commercial waste, and it's also led to evidence being gathered for the police and led to arrest for possession of a bladed article, racist graffiti, and also 76 community protection warning notices have been issued for various offences, and which has led on to further breaches of or non-compliance, should I say, for 39 community protection notices being issued. So that's the kind of thing that we've been involved in. Of course, I can reel off a hell of a lot more stats, but I think that would just go on and on and on. But happy to take any questions.
Anybody got any questions at all? Phil, Councillor Muldowney.
Thanks, Phil, for your part of the report. Can I ask what constitutes a fly tipping hotspot that would trigger the use of CCTV? Can you give us an idea?
Yes, of course. So we'd look at our data, we look at our stats, and so if we know that there is regular fly tipping in an area, we'll look at the most significant areas or locations where fly tipping is occurring. That's one of the bigger factors, and then that will become a hotspot. So if we've got a fly tipping in an area which is happening once or twice a year, as opposed to another location where it's happening 10 times in a year, obviously we'll hit the area where it's got fly tips 10 times a year.
Anybody else got any questions for Phil? Councillor Rigby?
Thank you, Chair. It's just regarding overgrown hedges. Are these sort of routinely checked, or do they tend to be done when you get reports of hedges overgrown?
Okay, so this is generic across the board for environmental enforcement officers. They will deal with all proactive breaches or offences as they come across them. But we often, for overgrown hedges, we often receive complaints and we respond to those complaints. But I don't expect any of the officers to walk past a seriously overgrown hedge to go on to another job. Does that answer your question?
I think so, yes. So it's not that you don't sort of look for them as such. It's just if you happen to see them or if they get reported to you.
Exactly that. If they're reported, we go out and we'll assess them. If they're on a journey for another issue and they come across them and they see a seriously grown hedge, they'll deal with it.
Hi, Phil.
Hi.
Are you responsible for putting up speed limits in, like Brentwood Road? You talk about speed cruising, and because we do have issues on Brentwood Road and Ossett Heath about people going above the limit. Are you responsible for putting these signs out there, at least even if it's 20 miles an hour, just to put the signs out there?
No, we're not responsible for that. No, not in environmental enforcement. We have the powers within the PSPO to issue fixed penalty notices.
Phil, we can ask for the police to go out with the guns, can't we? Occasionally it is something that can be done. They're not general public that are using it as well.
Sorry, Chair, I don't know if it's breaking up, so I didn't catch your first part. What the question was? The
guns that they go out with, we're checking the traffic speed. Is that something they do it with general public sometimes, don't they? And they won't get a letter saying you've got a speeding fine, but it's just to remind you. The police are doing that at the moment, aren't they? I know I've been out with them, so it is something you can ask. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, we're the council. We can always refer any issues or any concerns to the police and ask them to look into it.
If no one's got any questions, Phil, I don't want it to go on too long, so we have got another item 7 to get through. Just wanted to ask how we're doing with the people paying their fines and the cars we're actually taking away. Are we forward with that? Are we taking any cars?
Sorry, are we referring to the vehicles seized for fly tipping?
Yeah, people not paying their fines. We had that where you was going to, if they don't pay the third fine or second fine, we take the car. Is that moving forward?
Well, sorry, I apologise. I don't really understand your question. If someone fly tips, then we'll seize the vehicle if we know the vehicle's been used in the commission of an offence.
No, Phil, not the cars. The paper you brought to us with if people are not paying their fines, we would not.
Oh, I see.
We take the cars instead.
We're talking about parking. Right. Okay. So that's gone out through. It's gone past procurement and it's out at the moment, and we're waiting for to secure a contractor to conduct that aspect of it.
Lovely. Thanks, Phil. Anybody else got any more questions? No? Okay. Thank you, Phil. We're sorry to have kept you waiting so long.
That's fine. Thank you very much.
It's all right. Speak to you later. Bye-bye.
The last 3 slides, Chair, is going to be presented by Gavin.
Okay. Gavin?
Evening, Chair, evening, councillors. It's just the last slides here to go through them. Come down to some of the work that's undertaken by Public Protection and which falls within the remit of this committee. the first one, this just really gives you a flavour of the kind of work we do. There's a lot more underlying, but we'd be here literally all night if we went into too much detail. But one of the teams that falls under myself that undertakes work that would fall into your remit is the environmental protection team. Essentially, broadly speaking, it's to do with pollution. So the council have responsibility for permitting of certain industrial processes that could potentially contribute to pollution in the borough. It's a complex picture because some sites are regulated by the council and they're issued with permits under what's called Part 2B of the Environmental Protection Act, and some plants are regulated by the Environment Agency. And in Thurrock, just to make it even more complicated, we've got one plant that's regulated by both the council and the Environment Agency, and that's the sewage works at Tilbury. And certain parts of the plant, certain processes they have in there are regulated by the Environment Agency. Some are regulated by ourselves. So this entails officers visiting on an annual basis and inspecting the premises and ensuring that their mitigation measures for pollution are up to scratch. So, for example, for industrial chemicals, that their filtration processes are in order. These processes and plants do fail from time to time, as people might notice if they live in West Thurrock and their cars get coated by detergent. That would be where these things, have gone wrong. So our officers work, as I say, as part of the monitoring regime and the permitting regime for those premises, and they would seek to impose standards on the plant. Plant concerned to ensure, if you like, or as much as possible, that pollution is minimised. Another major function of the team is to look at, in conjunction with planning colleagues, to look at prevention, if you like, by way of consultation responses for planning applications. So people will put in planning applications for development, for road development, for example, in the case of the Lower Thames crossing, and it would be the responsibility of the Environmental Protection team to provide feedback in relation to those issues and what the potential problems might be, and also what mitigation might be put in place, either by way of building design or location, to reduce the impact on residents. We can't always prevent any impacts on residents, unfortunately, but we can, on a number of occasions, reduce it insofar as we can. These areas they're all quite technical, and they involve technical specialists, quite frankly. So we've got a guy called Dave Blazer who deals with contaminated land. So, for example, if you're building housing estates, what you don't want to do is build a housing estate, as has happened in certain places, and then have to tell the residents of the houses 5 years later not to eat the vegetables that they've grown in their own garden, for example, because it might be harmful to their health. So we have a specialist that does that. Mr. Dave Blazer's worked with us for a considerable period of time. The other main areas would be acoustics, so the harm that noise can do to people in the environment from road development and from other sources, and also air quality. We have we've recruited 2 officers recently to these posts to replace retiring officers. One's a gentleman called Peter Bond. He's our air quality specialist. He's responsible primarily for the management of the air quality monitoring network. Now in Thurrock because we've got an industrial heritage, we have 4 air quality monitoring stations, and they're supplemented by, if you like, laying out temporary air quality monitors by way of diffusion tubes, effectively. We probably have a few hundred of them dotted around the borough, mainly on lamp stands. To put it into context, we would have probably twice as many air quality monitoring stations as places like Dartford, similar industrial heritage, similar sort of riverside site, vastly more than places like Basildon and Brentwood, where they don't have as much industrial development, latent industrial development. In order to use that data, we would map the air quality, and it's used in one of 2 ways, really. It's used to inform people, almost like a weather report, if you like, in relation to the quality of the air at a given time. So if people have got particular sensitivities, asthma and the like, they can look on the London Air Quality website. Our monitoring stations feed into those real time, basically, so you can get a daily report, and it gives you a map, interactive map, so you can see where you are and what the levels of pollution are. And the other use they're put to is, as I say, for informing consultation responses for development and declaring air quality management areas. So, for example, there's an air quality management area in Tilbury, there's one in West Thurrock, got a lot of industrial sites, a lot of vehicle movements, a lot of pollution. So what that would do, the Declaration of Air Quality Management Areas, indicates to planning that they would need to be mindful of what permissions they're giving and what conditions they put onto developments to try and mitigate against air pollution in those cases. The acoustics, we've got a young lady who started today with us actually to do the acoustics consultation responses. We're very lucky actually, we've managed to get somebody who's graduate in acoustics, in architectural acoustics. She will supplement our field officers who have got various qualifications in acoustics, and she will provide the high level feedback, if you like, on applications. So she would deal with, it's not Highways England, is it? It's National Highways in their development of, say, the London, the Lower Thames crossing, and she would be responsible for looking at their environmental plan and their mitigation plans to see, if you like, that the mitigation measures, the barriers or the terraforming that they would put into place would stack up in terms of the reduction in noise that that they are claiming, as it were, and she would help the council challenge those kinds of decisions.
Gavin, can I just come in there? Have we employed a officer for quality control, the air quality?
We have, yeah.
Okay.
We had a previous officer who left us in, it was November the year before, and we had quite a considerable gap where we didn't have an officer specifically expert in that area, and it was to do with the difficulty with recruitment, to be quite honest. These people, there aren't that many people that are very well qualified in those areas. A lot of them who are working in universities and the like in research, so they're not necessarily wanting to take roles with local authorities. And having mentioned the fact that we have more air quality monitoring stations in Thurrock than a lot of other surrounding areas, it's a specialism that we would need that other local authorities might not. We might sell them some expertise actually by way of income generation because we have these facilities, but we would have a greater need of it than other local authorities. Well, other local authorities in this area, not all other local authorities. The other thing that that team does a lot of is statutory nuisance investigations. That's something that, as ward councillors, you're quite likely to come up against. Quite often it'll be one neighbour complaining about another. Maybe they might be having parties or whatever the case is. This is a sort of a situation where we have to take an adjudicating role because obviously we've got to look at the balance of one person's human rights against another. So you can't necessarily just say to people you can't make any noise at all or you can't ever have a party. That wouldn't be fair. But if it becomes extreme or it's too late at night or it's regular or they're having parties every weekend, for example, that would then be a problem, and our officers would deal with that by way of statutory notice generally. So, the procedure for that is that they would investigate, they would make observations, and they would come to a judgment as to whether the council or themselves on behalf of the council feel that there is an issue, and then they would take appropriate legal action, notice first, followed by prosecution and potentially seizure of noise-making equipment and various other steps that they would take. These, as Phil was alluded to earlier in relation to environmental enforcement complaints, these are numerous. We'd probably be getting 1,500, 2,000 complaints a year of one type or another for statutory nuisance. Quite often noise, but it can be things like smoke, dust, the insects, various other things that might give rise to people, an annoyance, if you like, in their lives. The statutory nuisance can, as I've mentioned earlier, come from their neighbours and other residents. It can also come from industrial and trade commercial premises. Additional complication in that trade and industrial premises have what's called a best practical means defence. So in simple terms, that means that if they're doing everything they can and they're applying the rules correctly, even though people may get some disturbance from noise or dust or whatever the case might be, they have a get out, if you like. The team also, they operate in order to investigate statutory nuisances. We operate an out-of-hours noise service. That's a sort of an expensive service, so we limit the hours to Friday and Saturday nights when parties, frankly, are more likely. So we don't have a routine service on, say, a Tuesday night, and we're not proposing to do that unless, obviously, that becomes a popular party night for whatever reason. But they do that, and in order to get the best value out of that in these strict times, I guess, in terms of finances, we also do work for other departments of the council while we're out. So, for example, planning enforcement will make observations on their behalf, and our officers are obviously a little bit like Phil's, they're experienced in the legal process, so they can provide statements of witness and the like. They also, we also operate a drone service. Now, we do that. We we do this semi-commercially, but we also do it for our own purposes in terms of observation of pollution. So, for example, arisings of dust from mineral piles and mineral extraction, smoke from sites, particularly if they're hard to access, and you might want to get a drone up, quick look at it. Survey of buildings, particularly the buildings that I've mentioned previously, where we would have a permitting responsibility, so we can use them for gaining evidence if the operators of plants, as they might well argue, we didn't do that, we weren't operating on that day at that time when that smell or that smoke affected your residents, and we might have, obviously timed footage to prove the contrary. So, and there are a vast number of other very small pieces of legislation that this team deals with. Around things like drainage and things of that description that they would assist with. High hedges is another one, and various other things that they would get involved in. I'll rush on because I realise time is late. The next team is Consumer Protection and Trading Standards. Essentially, they're metrology, which is like weights and measures, so they're the people that would check if there are issues with, say, you put a litre of petrol in your car, and we all know how expensive that is now, and you might not quite get a litre, depending on how the pump's been adjusted, so they would investigate complaints of that to make sure you actually get the weight or the volume that you're saying. Believe it or not, it's quite technical. Posts have to have special qualifications of this. It's actually a statutory appointment. It's one of the very few left, actually, in the council. It's the Chief Weights and Measures Officer. They also enforce things like, or would work particularly in conjunction with the police on scams, and rogue traders, a big one where you'll hear people lose their pension or large amounts of money to sort of unscrupulous builders. So they would work with the police quite frequently to actually get people arrested and charged for that kind of thing. It's an exception in our enforcement policy. We normally cut people a little bit of slack on some of our offences because they might, for pollution offences or for nuisance offences, they might not be deliberately committed, shall we say. They're not done with malice. They're just, someone's at a party and didn't realise they were disturbing the neighbours, for example. In the case of road traders, we always prosecute them immediately if we can get the evidence, essentially, because people are very badly affected by this. It's sort of, most people would say it's a fairly bad type of offence to be committing. I'm speaking fast here because I've got a lot more to get through here. I can slow up if need be. But the other big thing that trading standards do is that they'll do product safety. So, for example, when batteries blow up in people's laptop computers because they've been imported from Taiwan and they haven't put the appropriate voltage controls in and this kind of stuff, our trading standards officers would deal with that, and they would seek to have it removed from the market. We get about, I think, somewhere between about £150,000 and £200,000 a year from OPSS, which is the Office of Product Safety from the government, to operate a team at the port at Dubai Ports World to actually examine goods that come in. We've had to have an inspection facility built there recently because we didn't have one previously, and they stop vast numbers of consignments, and they have to do this on an intelligence-led basis. So they do it in conjunction with trading standards nationally, because there's a couple of things that happen if you start to stop every consignment and every container that comes in, the port binds up and people don't get their goods, and we all know there's problems with transport of goods anyway. Also, it's very costly. But their hit rate for actually opening containers and discovering defective goods is very high, and they do it on the basis of intelligence that's shared with Suffolk, Southampton, Milford Haven and all the other ports in the UK. So they're very linked up in doing that. It's a very successful team, and they quite literally prevent people being maimed and injured on a fairly large scale, because what will happen is that when a consignment of dangerous goods comes in, it's normally numbers, you can imagine it can number in the tens of thousands. The classic example we had was the ones that came in with hoverboards that were literally melting under people, and there's a lovely photograph somewhere I can probably fish out with the hoverboard embedded, burnt into the actual tarmac, and a pair of trainers one either side of it, which some wag from trading standards put there. I did check to make sure that the child wasn't actually on the board when it went up. But and I think there are 18,000 of these things coming, and they're ready to be sold at markets and at shops. And if they're unsafe, obviously people can get quite severely injured. So obviously we would be keen to stop this kind of thing. The other small element of work they do would be zoonosis, control of animal diseases. They're responsible in certain instances for the enforcement of biosecurity measures. There was a recent outbreak of avian flu, so they have to visit bird keepers and this kind of people and ensure they're keeping their birds indoors to prevent the spread of that kind of thing. And a little bit as will come on with animal welfare, the welfare of farmed animals, basically. Licensing, it's got a committee of its own actually, but it comes under your remit. Essentially, they license all sorts of activities: drinking, alcohol, premises licences, gambling, pet shops. That's where the animal welfare element of their work comes in. Taxis and private hire vehicles, and there are also street trading as well, incidentally. And there are also numerous other small licences that we issue from time to time, depending on whether there's an application for one in the borough. They also do obviously a lot of out-of-hours work to undertake that role. And as I say, they have their own committee, and there's a whole regulatory system that relates to that, with subcommittees to determine applications and where people can raise reviews. So, for example, if you're having an issue with a licensed premises, if it's an alcohol premises, a pub, it's possible for people to raise reviews to that licence, and the committee can impose restrictions on the operation of the licence to assist with the mitigation of the ill effects of the nuisance or whatever that might be caused. Animal welfare. We don't really have an overall overarching role in animal welfare, but what we do is certain things, as I say, that do contribute to animal welfare. So the trading standards team operate the council stray dog service. So that'll be where stray dogs essentially, or dogs stray, and they need to be removed, taken quite often off a highway to prevent road accidents and the like. And the council will do that via we have a contractor that does that basically for us, and that operates 7 days a week, so people can report stray dogs basically.
And I thought we'd given up that.
No, we haven't. We still do it. We're obliged to, like everything basically that is done in public protection. They're all statutory duties, and in the case of stray dogs, there is a statutory duty that people request. So we wouldn't necessarily be going out looking for stray dogs in a proactive way, but when people phone up, they'll get a responsive service. The dog warden will try and find the dog basically and bring it to the kennels. And generally speaking, I think we rehome these dogs. We don't euthanize them. We haven't had to. It is possible that could occur in certain circumstances, but I think it's only been done in Thurrock, to my knowledge, when there's been a medical reason the dog's just not been well enough to save, basically. But our contractors normally manage to rehome them, and they've been relatively successful in that. Dead animal removal, that's not really ours. That's something that the waste crews will do if they're found, obviously. And that's about it for me, really. Happy to take any questions.
One good thing for me, because I didn't know we'd taken that back on board.
We do,
stray
yeah.
dogs.
Dangerous dogs is rest with the police.
Yeah.
Section 1 dogs, but
just one small thing. Just going back to planning, when you said that perhaps a housing development is built on contaminated land.
Yeah.
I know obviously whoever builds on that would have to do preliminary things before they get to that. But, I would imagine they would investigate it before they actually build. I've got one in my ward that's come up and hasn't gone through yet, not been built on yet, but we know that rubbish was dumped on there. So I would hope that would be something that we could investigate to make sure.
It definitely would be considered as part of the planning process. And what would happen, generally speaking, there's normally a way to mitigate land contamination. You can actually just excavate and backfill with clean soil. The arguments are normally around cost, because the cost of remediation is quite expensive. It depends on the financial context they're in at the time. At one point, developers were so hungry for land they would literally just do more or less everything or anything that we asked them to actually get their development through. That's changing to some extent, and it would be essentially it would be a case of the council placing conditions on the advice of our contaminated land officer, and the kind of things they would do to form their opinion. They might actually undertake scientific testing of soil, but they also would have a historical context.
What you said about people planting their vegetables.
Yeah, that wasn't actually in Thurrock. That was slightly to the west of here.
Yeah,
in a local authority that I previously worked.
We've got a site where the persimmon site was built opposite the college, and the land opposite that where we're trying to get a wood put in, that has still got contamination coming from that.
That's a landfill site,
Yeah, that was dumped on with vehicles and petrol and diesel and God knows what. But they've got, in Woodside School, they've got something that tests and that's still showing signs of stuff coming up.
One of the potential issues you can get is that landfill gas is heavier than air, so it could accumulate in subfloor voids and basements, for example, and then it can potentially explode. So one of the conditions that they might use if they're developing in those kind of areas is that they would put gas alarms in the lower levels or in the basement of the building to alert people to the fact that this could happen, and they would hopefully provide.
We could put trees in as a wood, and it would alleviate some of that. But persimmon are very hard to get through to.
Certainly beautify the area, but
Darren's dealing with that.
Yeah, it's
anyway,
very much. I know exactly the site you're talking about, and it's up and down because the land isn't consolidated because of the extent of the previous landfill activity there, and the heath is.
It's good to know, though. Yeah, it's good to know. Any other questions from anyone? Councillor Tandy?
Apologies for interrupting.
No, it's all right.
Just thinking it's 9:20, so if members who want to complete the agenda with item 7 may want to consider suspending standing orders just to...
Yeah, okay. Is everybody happy with that? Just to get to our last item. Is that all right?
If anyone's got any particular questions that we haven't got time to answer tonight, you can always email me, and I can...
Okay. Councillor Tandy?
Dennett,
quick one.
gdennett@thurrock.gov.uk. Yeah. It is, it's D as well, and there is a Gavin Bennett, and I know a lot more about bus stops than I should because he works in the transport planning department and all sorts, parking permits and all sorts of things. That I could probably almost issue them now, quite frankly, because we both worked here for a long time.
Well, if you want to ask.
It is indeed, yeah.
Councillor Tandy?
Yeah, just a quick one. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is our borough like the 4th or 5th worst in air pollution in the country? Is that right?
It depends on the way you measure it. It's quite a complex picture. We could obviously, there's an economic balance to arguments around air pollution, so we know, broadly speaking, what causes it, and we could stop it, but people would possibly starve and freeze to death. So it's not necessarily straightforward. It varies depending on the day, but I would say that generally speaking, the bigger conurbations are more of a problem, and it's quite interesting that it's not always associated with economic deprivation either. So, for example, Kensington and Chelsea in London is extremely high for air pollution, and yet it's where a lot of rich people live, basically. And it can be to do with industry. It can also be to do with things like built environment and the urban landscape, if you like, affecting airflows. But I wouldn't say we're particularly bad as the UK, but we do have some pollution areas, basically, because of the industrial heritage.
Just a quick one, thank you. With the dead animal removal, with cats, though, they're scanned, aren't they?
They are, and my understanding, and Darren might know more about this, they used to always keep a note, didn't they? And it's to do with identifying a cat in case the owner should come forward, or they can contact the owner.
So does that just need slightly amending, that paragraph, do you think? Because it just makes it sound like they're all just removed and disposed of.
Okay, we can look at that. Yeah,
it might panic cat owners, I suppose. If it's,
indeed.
It might be worth putting that in.
It's probably more foxes and badgers, to be fair, I would think. But in reality, we can do that, and we would seek to reunite the deceased with its owner if need be.
Thank you.
I'll ask something to put in on pets.
They do take a chance, the old cats, when they try and get across the road. Definitely. No, that's right. Okay. Is everybody happy with that? Councillor Madani, you're going to email Gavin with anything you've got? Yeah? Okay. Right, item 7, cleaning and greening. Is this you, Vincent?
Yes, ma'am.
Right there.
Thank you again, Chair, councillors. The report is with regards to abandoned trolleys and a policy to be put in place to help deal with this. Abandoned trolleys blight the local environment and can lead to further littering and fly tipping. There are approximately 20 shopping trolleys a day that are being abandoned in our streets and housing estates in Thurrock, and over 400 shopping trolleys per month. The council can adopt statutory powers that would enable it to collect abandoned shopping trolleys and luggage trolleys from land open to the public, return them to the owner, and to recover the council's reasonable costs in doing so. If a scheme is not put in place with the stores and the trolleys are not collected, the council can recover full costs for their collection, storage and disposal. This policy statement provides details of relevant legislation, outlines proposals, provides information on the resource implications. The report also sets out the requirement for a formal consultation that seeks support to recommend to Cabinet the adoption of the relevant statutory powers. So, in this report, my recommendation is that the Cleaner, Greener and Safer Overview and Scrutiny Committee support the recommendation to Cabinet for the initiation of the process for the adoption of the new abandoned trolley cost recovery policy. We're not, I'm being clear, I'm not actually advocating right now for the adoption of those powers, because there are a number of hoops that we've got to jump through before we actually do this, that being the consultation process with both the stores themselves and also with other interested parties. As I go further down through that, those relevant parties include the local retailers who offer trolleys to their customers, the representative bodies, for example, the British Retail Consortium, the Association of Town Centre Management, the Association of Convenience Stores, also local residents, so we have to put a consultation in place around that, rail, tram, road transport or airport operators who provide trolleys, local police and the Environment Agency. And all of those will be consulted with prior to us looking towards the adoption of these powers. As you would have all read the report, I'm not going to paraphrase going through all of it because that will just take up far too much time. What this does give us is a mechanism by which I'm hopeful that we'll get compliance from the stores. It's not about a money-making scheme on our part. In very much the case, I would like it to be a victim of its own success in the fact that once the stores have been charged for a number of trolleys, they put in place measures to stop those trolleys being taken away from the premises, whether that be through the pound coin deposit within the trolley or any other mechanism physically that stops that trolley being removed. This will hopefully lead to a reduction in those trolleys within the environment that we have to dispose of at our cost. So this just puts in a mechanism in place to put the onus back onto the retailer to keep control of the trolleys, and if they don't do so, for us to be able to reasonably recover our costs for the collection, storage and ultimately disposal. It also puts in place a mechanism where they can have an agreement with ourselves that should they wish, we can return the trolley back to the store for a fee. This would be beneficial for them in the case that the trolley is worth more than that fee. We would look at, we've got a number of sites throughout the borough where we will be able to put the trolleys onto. I haven't gone into amazing depth within the report about the process of how this actually happens, but it's things we'd have to tag each trolley. So we have to take pictures in situ, and there is a whole process then around how the stores are then notified, and the process around that and the letters, and making sure that all the wording on that is correct. That is something that once we have an agreement that it is a policy that we would like to pursue, this is to get the ball rolling and for us then to say, okay, it's something we want to do, let's do this.
Other than putting trackers on them, I don't know what you can do. I don't even know what the stores are going to do to make.
Tesco's will have to do
The big stores may do something. A seized trolley can be sold or disposed of after 6 weeks. Who are you going to sell it to? Just like to know.
I must admit, I've taken that straight from the legislation, so I wouldn't be looking at it saying it would, if it goes into the scrap pile and it gets sold for scrap, or any other way that we then dispose of it.
I just think, whatever we can do to, you see it across from Sainsbury's, there's a big row of them every week. If you go past there, you'll see, and I won't mention the place where they are, but there's a big row of them. So if they can get away with not putting the pound in, if someone wants to go and collect them, they've got themselves quite a bit of money, haven't they? And wheel them back. They can earn, the kids can earn themselves a bit of money, but who knows? No, I can't see anything wrong in it, Vince. Anybody else got any questions? No? Councillor Maldani?
Yeah, it seems like a really sensible policy. That this is something that's costing us and inconvenient, and I like the idea of putting the onus back on the stores to actually manage their trolleys, which is where it should be, rather than leave it to the local authority to clear up at their own cost. So, looks really good. Great.
Trouble is, I don't think the stores know where they go. Sometimes, you might find someone going into Sainsbury's. They go all the way into the middle of Trafford 100, so it could be anywhere, couldn't it? They want to wheel their shopping back and they haven't got a car. I suppose they're going to do it. But no, any other questions at all? Are we all done? Okay, recommendation that Cleaner, Greener and Safer Overview and Scrutiny Committee support the recommendation to Cabinet and the initiation of the process for the adoption of new abandoned trolley cost recovery policy. I never thought I'd say that, but well, I'd like to see the outcome. Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Vincent, very much. Okay, is everybody happy with that? Yes. Okay, thank you. That brings us to 9:35. The work plan, yeah. I was going to say, if anybody's got anything that they would like to bring forward to put onto the work plan, I'm quite happy if they get in touch with Democratic Services or me. I think the September one's quite full, isn't it? So there's quite a bit on that. So November one, not got much on it at the moment. I'd like to see, I've asked for the parking strategy on grass verges to come to us. Councillor Maldani?
As air quality has moved portfolio, I believe, from health to now to the environment, I wonder if it would be good to have a paper on air quality coming to the committee.
Vince, yeah, sorry. In Wickham Park here, I got this report that there's a lot of dog fowl around Wickham Parks. So I'm thinking if you can provide is there anything you can do about that?
I will look into that for you, Councillor, and see what can be done.
We haven't got dog bins anymore, have we? It all goes in the normal bin.
The litter bins are a dual-purpose litter bin for both litter and dog fouling. So I will look at what the litter bin provision within the area is like, and see if there's anything we can do with it.
All right, you're going to get back to me, yeah?
I'll get back to you, yeah.
Thank you.
There's two things you've got to go back to now.
Makes life easier. See you face to face.
Thanks, everybody. We finished at 9:32, 35, 37. It feels like it sometimes. Thank you, everybody. Cheers. Thank you.